There she is.
Hi, hi, hi. How is everybody?
Great to be here.
Fantastic.
Hi. Oh my goodness. We're here. We're doing it. Carlos, I like your sweater.
Thank you.
We're here doing this. I mean, I feel like this has been a major project. Welcome to the Brown and Black podcast. Carlos Lopéz Estrada, Kelly Marie Tran. What was the main core connection to creating a poetry movie?
It all started as we were finishing the blind spotting journey. And that movie, even though I got to work on it with Davina and Rafa, it was their story about their hometown. It became a deeply, deeply personal film for me, just because we really put all of ourselves into that movie for a really long time. So I was now faced with that challenge that many young directors have, which is what comes next. And knowing that this film meant so much to me, I said to myself that I really didn't want to work on anything that I couldn't connect with and I couldn't fall in love with as much as I had for blind spotting. And so I was reading scripts, I was meeting with potential collaborators, and there just simply wasn't anything that moved me in the way that I felt like I needed to be moved in order to really commit to jumping onto a second film. And right around that time, I got invited to a spoken word poetry workshop where all the poets that you ended up seeing in the film.
Wait, who was this person? Who was this person that created the path to this magic?
This magical person, her name is Diane Luby Lane, and she is the director of a nonprofit organization called Get Lit. They're a nonprofit based out of Koreatown here in LA, and their mission is essentially to empower the youth through literature. So they teach classic spoken word, classic poetry, and then connected to contemporary spoken word poetry. And it's been hugely successful. It's, touched the lives of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of LA youth, and it's just an incredible program. So we had a connection through a few friends in common, and she invited me to just come sit into one of these poetry sessions. And I was just moved beyond belief by what I saw there. It was just this group of young artists. I think the age range was 16 to 25, all from different corners of LA, just because the organization works with schools all around the district. And I just felt that thing that I hadn't felt with any of the other potential projects that I was exploring. And it was this desire to really fall in deep and connect with these people. And I guess that was the seed that started Summertime. This was almost 2.5 years ago.
I have to ask you now, Kelly, because I knew Carlos from Blind Spotting, and then we interviewed him together for Ray. And to me, seeing this film, it blew me away. Okay, I was just blown away, and I totally fell in love with it. So I have to assume you did too. But as a storyteller who's been involved in, one of the greatest lines of all time, I have to. You're an actress, but you're a storyteller, and this is storytelling. Prose, in terms of storytelling, I mean, what is Shakespeare? So what did you fall in love with about this? Because I'm assuming you did. And what made you want to get involved to the level you have?
Yeah, I think, similar to what Carlos was saying earlier, I feel like after, maybe it's different, but I feel like Carlos and I had a conversation as sort of Raya Press was ending. And I was at a point in my career where I had really come from nothing, and I was doing, tiny bits on TV shows and a commercial once every 3 years, to then doing Star Wars and then doing Raya. And I remember thinking to myself, okay, I have done these two things that are so much bigger than me, and I want to figure out who I am as a storyteller, as an artist. What are the things that I actually care about? What are the things that I want to put my voice behind? And it was very clear to me that I think we live in a culture of sort of that really encourages people to just get more stuff and do bigger things and make sure your face is on posters. And that was like the opposite of what I wanted as an artist. And I was having this conversation with Carlos over dinner, and he was telling me about Summertime, and he sent me a link, and then I watched it and I was fully emotionally moved. And I think that it wasn't just that experience, which already just the experience of being moved by something in this day and age where it feels like there's so much stuff and not a lot of things that emotionally move you was something that was already a big deal to me. But then to really get to know the poets and to go through a poetry program essentially tailored to Carlos and myself, where they taught us how to write poetry. And it just absolutely rejuvenated me as an artist, and really helped me, I think, literally find my voice and figure out like what I wanted to do. And it has been an absolutely magical experience, and I'm just grateful to be part of it. And I can't wait for people to see this movie.
So how did both of you convince producers that poetry needed to be created into a feature-length film? I at first was like, poetry, oh man, I don't know about this. I don't know about poetry in my life at this moment. I don't read poetry. I don't do poetry. It's not my vibe. Yet I saw Summertime and I'm all into poetry now. I'm like, so explain to me the power of poetry and why this type of spoken word poetry needs to be a part of our cinema today.
That's a good question, and let me see if I can try to answer it as I enter my front door. Okay, so here I go. Getting the movie made, it was in many ways near impossible, and in many ways it was really effortless. And I'll explain to you why. I saw this showcase in April, and I came to Diane Luby Lane, the director of Get Lit, with the idea to turn it into film probably like the beginning of May. And everyone was very excited. The poets were really excited. We were trying to figure out how to piece it together. But then we quickly found out that the summer was coming, and after the summer, because so many of the poets were in high school, were essentially just going to disperse all throughout the states. They were going to college, they were starting jobs, they were like, entering the new chapter in their lives, and were going to be unavailable. By the way, I was also starting my job at Disney, so that was a big factor in it. So we all decided that the only way that this could happen was if we did it over the summer, which meant that we had to start immediately and that we had to shoot it by the end of August. So that gave us like a 3-month, it wasn't even pre-production. It was like workshopping / writing / prepping. We had 3 months for that period. And then we had like 3 weeks to shoot it, which meant that we had to start immediately, which meant that, the original plan was, look, let's shoot it on phones for no money, and let's just do it like real independent.
Wow.
Yeah, let's just
Soderbergh
like shoot
style. Let's just Soderbergh
yeah, that was kind of the intent. It was like, look, we're obviously never gonna get money for this because there's no script. The idea is just like, let's turn poems into an interconnected narrative, and the poets who have never been in a movie before or in front of like a professional film camera are going to be the stars of it. So like, clearly no one will ever get behind this, so let's just do it ourselves. And we kind of started putting it together with that mentality. And coincidentally, I had met the people at the Los Angeles Media Fund around that same time, and we were having breakfast together, and I just brought the project up. I said, look, this is a thing that I'm very excited about. We're going to do it this summer. And I just saw something in their faces just light up. I think it's just because of the fact that it was being told by real people in LA, the fact that, they're the LA Media Fund. And I think also they gauged level of excitement, and they could see how sort of like hyped I was on it. So they said, look, let us just think about it for a minute, because we may be able to support it. And anyway, long story short, they came on as the financiers, and they gave us it wasn't a lot of money, but it was just enough to be able to do it with a crew and like pay everyone and just things that we weren't considering originally. And that's really how we did the production. So we're like eternally grateful to them. And just in terms of like the power, I don't know, Kelly, do you want to maybe, because I think you have probably a great answer to the power of poetry, I think.
Yeah, I mean, oh man, I think what is so powerful about summertime, but also just about the poets in general, is like this idea that here are these young, I don't want to say kids because they're not all kids, young adults, who are so brave and so vulnerable in their art. Like and I think, going through the poetry program myself and then getting to a point where I performed, and Carlos also performed one of his poems.
Oh, we got to see this video.
They were filmed. Whether you'll see them or not, I'm gonna have to do some soul searching, but they're filmed. Yeah, why not? I actually like my poem, and Kelly's is fantastic, and you will see Kelly's poem because we're gonna release it soon.
Ooh.
Nice.
But yeah, I think there's something so healing about using art and words in order to heal yourself of trauma, and to see the ways in which these young artists are able to do that. It really inspired me to want to do that with my own trauma. And I just think it's such a healing thing. I don't know, Carlos, what do you think?
I think it just, especially now, it seems like we're entering this new era of sort of like film and storytelling, where like people are no longer willing to ignore the voices that have been ignored for a really long time. And these are all people who come from represented backgrounds and who are using all of their experiences to create art. And the only reason that they're doing it is so that anyone else who may be going through a similar experience can connect and can sort of like grow from it. And I think that's just so beautiful. And I feel like the movie feels to me timelier than ever. And it feels like poetry, and I don't think it's all types of poetry. I think it's this kind of poetry, the kind of poetry that comes from people from marginalized communities, the kind of poetry that has a strong social component, and that is essentially like a form of activism. It's becoming sort of like a mainstream tool now, and we saw it with Amanda Gorman, and we see it with Hamilton and In the Heights, and all these things that have elevated text, that have people from underrepresented communities just talking about their identity through poetry. So I don't know, it feels to me like it wasn't something that we were trying to do, but it seems like we are now a part of this really important movement that's happening, and just so happy to put the poets' voices out there for more people to fall in love with them.
I feel that as you create your art creates. As you define your art defines you. So it's one thing, it is very satisfying to help elevate other artists, support other artists, and help other storytellers get their stories out there. There's something very, there's a lot to that. But at the same time, you learn a lot about yourself. So I'm wondering, through this process, what you've learned about yourself in this, getting involved in this project.
That's a really beautiful question. I learned a lot. I think I'm still learning. One of the coolest things I think about this entire process is just how much social justice is part of the campaign and part of the just experience of the movie, if that makes sense. I think for me, the intersection between activism and art has never been more alive, and it has been something that this experience has taught me can be one of the most rewarding things in the world. Is how do we use our words and our voices to, like you said, elevate the voices of those who have historically been ignored, but also to really say something and to make art that opens people's minds and hearts and is radical. I think that's what I want to do forever, and it's something that I learned during this experience.
To me, what's been most meaningful about this experience is that the way that this community of poets approaches their work is essentially by not trying to ignore the things about yourself, the things about your past that are complicated, that are challenging, that are sometimes, you know, considered sort of like dark or scary, to embrace those, to like really have you thinking about them, talking about them, and sharing it with other people, because that's ultimately the only way that we can learn how to heal and how to be okay with it. So whether it's things about your background, things about your persona, things about your culture or your place in the world, that may be difficult, complicated, or just like sad. This type of poetry invites you to like welcome those into your life, to celebrate those, and to share them with as many people as possible. And it really did that to me. It like it forced me to think about the way that I'm approaching not just my work and my creativity, but also just my life and the decisions that I'm making, and how I'm choosing to spend my time. And it just forced me to be like so kind to myself, so open to sharing it with others. And it's like a form of activism that is so powerful. It's because it's like rooted in truth, and just so beautiful. So I mean, I think Kelly would probably agree, but I feel forever changed after working with these young poets. And like, it's definitely going to be my life and career pre-summertime, and then everything that comes after is going to be like significantly different because of it. It's like I just they kind of like rewired my brain to process information differently. So it's like I'm more thankful to them than I think they are to us for making this movie. Yeah.
For you both, what can we all do better to improve that we see more movies like this?
You're asking the $1 million question here. I mean, Kelly, do you want to take a crack first, or I can?
Man, if I knew the answer,
I can start.
I would have told everyone already.
Yeah. No, I feel like what's most scary about it, and what's also the most inspiring about it, is that this has to be a group effort, right? This has to be like all of our community coming together to make sure that these stories get made, supported, talked about, lifted, highlighted, celebrated, repeated. And it's not just us as filmmakers bringing them out, but it's also, you know, all of you as journalists and sort of like the critics of our work, making sure that we make space for these kinds of movies, making sure that we continue to encourage our fellow artists to just look around them and try to highlight the stories that normally wouldn't get highlighted, and doing anything that we can so that we can, you know, systematically introduce this diversity that you see in the movie to all of our workplaces. So whether it's in journalism for you all, the people who write about our movies, the people who talk and criticize our movies, whether it's us in front and behind the camera. Yeah, I wish that I had a more prescriptive answer, but I feel like, you know, us having this conversation right here with you too, and your audience supporting our movies, supporting the other movies that need this kind of support, and it's really just, I think, a community effort to lift each other up, and it seems like people are taking it really seriously. It seems like we are a part of this movement. So I would just say, like, we should keep doing it and doing it even more seriously, because I feel like it can really become sort of like the new norm and the new mainstream, which is an exciting thought, but it requires, I think, a lot of efforts from a lot of people.
Since human beings have been creating story, whether it's poetry, whether it's Bible stories, kids stories, fables, every culture, cave drawings are telling stories. Why do you think we need story? What do you think the purpose of story is for human beings?
You guys are asking all the good questions.
These are deep questions.
I know. We should definitely do this and make the 2-hour version of this.
Yes.
You want to take it, Kelly?
Yeah. I mean, I can only speak for myself. I try not to speak for other people in terms of like how everyone is affected by stories, but I can.
You got to speak for all humans. Okay?
Yeah.
All burden.
For humankind.
But I will say, for me, you know, I grew up as a kid who, kind of a lonely kid who read a lot of books, and those were my friends. And I think me being able to live in sort of imaginary worlds where magic was real and impossible things were possible really gave me the courage to pursue the things that I'm doing now. You know, I'm from a world where my parents didn't have the luxury of thinking about self-fulfillment. They didn't, like, I got to have a roof over my head and food on the table. So I got to think about, what would I want to do to make myself happy? My parents were just working jobs to make sure that we were fed. So I think for me, storytelling holds this really special place in my heart, because it was the thing that told me that impossible things are possible. And I think it's one of the reasons why I'm sitting here today talking to you and doing the things that I'm doing.